If you're a kid, please make note of this. It's for your own good.
Sorry, but you're only allowed to watch the opening portion of this video. The rest of it is DLC, all of which costs about $30 a piece. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking like I'm someone from EA or some other company who doesn't do DLC very well. Let's just get on with the video.
When you think of video game DLC, what do you think of? If you just think of the purpose it was truly meant to have, that being just extras to games, or if the mere mention of the word sparks groan-inducing thoughts within you, that is completely understandable. DLC in general has been misused so many times before to attempt practices that really should not have been tried with, or completely come off as developers wanting to make a quick buck through any means necessary. And that genuinely upsets me, on top of the fact that it's been generally discussed negatively among the populace, because the base concept of DLC is something I can easily get behind. You are able to get as much mileage out of a game as possible, depending on what the game is going for it, and DLC can help amplify that. It allows creators to continue building upon ideas that they couldn't do during the main development, and in general, gives options for consumers to continually support a game that they believe deserves it, and that brings us here today. Now, what I value in DLC in general is how it can expand upon my view of a game, or even drastically change it. With prices that DLC can go for, I feel better spending money for something that can add on to how enjoyable a game can truly be, if it feels it's actually worthy more of my time. Because if I don't enjoy the base game, I'm not sure DLC is going to change my mind about it. I should also make this very clear. A certain DLC can count, even if somewhere down the line it was sold on its own without the base game attached to it, or if it was straight up included in a later release of the game. No, I won't charge you for anything for watching this video. That was a joke. One thing some companies have done with DLC that is solely the term in the eyes of others is deliberately take integral parts of the game, whether they relate to the story or flesh out the gameplay, and sell them as separate content. I get that there aren't technically any boundaries as to what can be DLC, but if devs do this and charge money for it, on top of charging a high price for the game that they slice the content from, it really becomes clear where their priorities were, and can make the game really hard to support, regardless of how it actually is. Thankfully, The Last of Us has much better priorities. Regardless of how you feel about the game as a whole, it is abundantly clear that Naughty Dog wanted to make an engaging story that felt complete from beginning to end, and give it to you with no extra catches. Honestly, the game felt like it was at its full potential already, that DLC at that point would just be a nice little extra. And I'm pretty sure that's what Naughty Dog thought when developing the DLC campaign, Left Behind. Now, I will admit that this one doesn't enhance the gameplay that massively, aside from letting you play as Ellie a bit more, given you didn't play as her a ton in the base game, nor does it expand upon the base story that much, but that's okay, because I honestly love the extra bit of character they gave Ellie, on top of the story here being absolutely fine on its own merits. This story, which focuses on Ellie's adventure through an abandoned mall she spent time with a late friend of hers, doesn't rely on your knowledge of the base game, nor does it feel like a part of the game you need to know about in order to understand the full story, which makes me happy. It gives Left Behind a chance to stand strong as its own thing, and they really do take advantage of that. The relationship between Ellie and Riley feels genuine, given that neither has seen each other for a while, and Riley has a strong desire to see her again, even working around her own duties to do so. There's tons of really sweet moments that they have together through this mall, like visiting a Halloween shop, making silly pictures that you can post on Facebook if you have an account on there, which I don't, and my personal favorite, visualizing a fighting game using an arcade machine to get it to play out. I honestly smiled through a lot of these, and it really showed that the two had a believable chemistry, which is why I felt something by the end when both got bitten by the infected. While Ellie lives thanks to her immunity, Riley is not so fortunate. Even if it is foreshadowed, I was really sad to see their time end like this, but it made Left Behind's story even better for me. The experience with this bonus content is actually quite enthralling considering how much you actually pay for it, and even if it doesn't change my thoughts on the game that much, I still will gladly accept it as a great bonus to an already great game. And sometimes, that's all DLC needs to be. Going from one game that did what it said to do with no strings attached to another, SpiderMan PS4 also had a campaign that was tight, focused, and satisfying. But Insomniac and Marvel decided that they wanted to do more, and so, The City That Never Sleeps was born. It's quite evident that the devs noted all the positives with the base game, because this package of 3 episodes gave us more of them. Each of these campaigns has their own little story that all connect to each other due to the threat being consistent, yet focused enough to be sold as 3 separate episodes that can be bought as one giant package. I'm a big fan of how much more screen time it gives some characters in the base game that had a fair bit of story relevance, like Yuri and Silver Sable, and gives some spotlight to characters relegated to side quests in the base game, like Black Cat and Photobomb, and they do a great job working them into the story with the new faces. In general, it feels like its own adventure instead of being mandatory to get the full experience of what the game wanted to do at launch, despite beginning only a month after the game came out. And heck, this DLC goes further with gameplay too. Combat sections have been spiced up even more thanks to the additions of new enemies, both in terms of difficulty and fun factor, which also extends to the new hideouts. The challenges Photobomb provides feel like a natural evolution of the Taskmaster challenges in the base game. There's more collectibles and new kinds of street crimes you can do to help make fulfilling that quota not as arduous, and the new suits you can get are always a plus. Aside from that, this overall gives you more of everything that was great about the base game, and is packed with enough content to warrant the price tag. Definitely a great way to expand upon the game in my book. I've never really had a problem with paying extra money for bonus content in a game, implying that the base game has enough to warrant a solo purchase, and if I feel the DLC is worth my time, but there are a select few developers who are willing to give additional content for completely free. Usually it's stuff like cosmetics and extra difficulty settings, which are fine by me, but providing stuff like bonus campaigns for no extra cost is actually kind of generous. I'll never expect it to be the new standard, but man, it feels like robbery that I was able to experience Specter of Torment by only paying the amount of money I paid for the base game. Now, Shovel Knight prior to this spot was already a great game, having 2 solid campaigns in its repertoire, but Specter of Torment not only took a lot of steps forward, but it also slightly impacted my view of the game quite a bit. Specter Knight in general is loads more fun to control for starters. His movements feel so slick and so satisfying to pull off, and there are many different power-ups he gets that are so much fun to use, even more so than Shovel Knights and Plague Knights. He does so much to stand out in his own way that the levels have been completely redesigned to suit his skills, and honestly, his versions of the levels made revisiting them not arduous at all. Going off the beaten path with him still leads to great rewards, and the bosses have also had some changes leading to new strategies and new ways of fighting them. The story added in is also a lot more interesting than the previous 2 routes, and it actually had me a bit emotionally invested in some parts. I was shocked at how much further this campaign went with the characters and the overall world that it honestly started to feel like the devs wanted to bring out the game to its fullest potential, given it was already a smash hit when it first came out. Because of this campaign, I actually really like the game even more than I did already, and that's a serious accomplishment for a free DLC pack if I have ever seen it. And even with King of Cards and Showdown getting added in afterwards, I feel like this is the high point of the game, and it easily sells it for me. You knew this one was coming. With all the crazy additions we got in Smash over the years, it has gone from a celebration of Nintendo to a celebration of gaming as a whole. I mean, the floodgates for character possibilities swung open once Solid Snake and Sonic were included in Brawl, but when Smash 4 came around, not only did we get some great newcomers from Nintendo and third-party games alike, but that game also had DLC with some utterly wild ideas. I will never forget the day when Cloud was revealed for Smash. It was a glorious sight. And then Ultimate happened and brought together everyone for a grand time, along with including some brilliant choices for newcomers. But Nintendo decided that that was not enough and added in DLC that no matter how costly it gets, I will gladly sell pieces of my soul for. Sure, not every single pick was like seeing Cloud get revealed again, but man, there were a couple where the lightning struck hard, namely with Joker, this Baron Bird, and Buster Wolf. Regardless of that, every single character made sense to include, and honestly expanded upon the game in ways that I could have never imagined. Even if Byleth didn't break new ground, she's honestly one of my favorites to play as for the sheer variety and power she brings with her moveset. Min feels like a lot of fun when you understand how she works. Hero has some really cool tricks with this menu, and quite the kill potential. Banjo's such a fun inclusion, Terry's destructive in the right hands, and Joker is honestly one of the most creative and fun fighters I've ever played in Smash. Oh, and there's a plant as well. Can't say I was expecting one. Ultimate's roster was already complete as it was, so anything beyond that would just be way more love than we deserve. But man, does it feel good to have these characters around, regardless. They're wonderful additions, and I do hope that whoever comes next will continue this streak. Oh my. Oh my. Also, if you're wondering how I'd rank each DLC fighter, it goes something like this. You're welcome. Fire Emblem Fates is an interesting game to bring up regarding DLC. Even though I felt personally okay with spending $40 for one path and paying $20 for the other 2 routes each, I can honestly see why that decision would be so divisive. Heck, Revelation, the route where everything does turn out for the best, can only be bought digitally regardless of whether you got Birthright or Conquest, so it is technically DLC. But if you ask me personally, I don't really feel comfortable acknowledging it like that. let alone placing it on this, despite my overwhelmingly positive opinion on not just it, but Fates as a whole. So instead, I'm actually going to bring up what other DLC was offered. Most of these are just fun scenarios for the characters, but Intelligent Systems actually decided to go on ahead and make xenologues to flesh out the world and characters in a way that is welcomed. Hidden Truths did a great job with this, but in terms of performing this task and just overall being well designed, Heirs of Fate is a thing of beauty. Following the idea of certain units in the game having children should they get married, Heirs of Fate decided to give them more to do than what they had in the base game, which was just supports and battle capabilities, which were already great to begin with. This DLC actually tells an engaging story spanning across 6 episodes as to how exactly they were left to fend for themselves after their parents were taken out of commission. Their overall strength is tested, and they are given more material to work off of each other, grow more mature, and adapt to the certain circumstance. Granted, some characters get more attention than others, but I honestly like how well these episodes are written, and how they let most of the units get some time to shine, even some of the minor ones. I also like the extra bit of world building, with the Hoshin children coming from the Birthright timeline, and the Norin children coming from the Conquest one, building off more of the ideas the base game presented, and the payoff just feels clear-cut and satisfying to see. And hey, the maps are well designed too! Each unit you take control of in these episodes has pre-built stats and kits that cannot be affected by how you built them in the base game, and these maps take all that into account and legitimately challenge you to see what you can make of it. There's a fair share of new and returning map designs, but they all feel like you can legit beat them by thinking ahead without the margin for error being so big that you can basically do anything and get away with it. It's because of this arc that a few of these child units are some of my favorite characters in the game, maybe even the whole series. And overall, the Heirs of Fate xenologues capped off my already immensely high love for the game just about perfectly. I am the Lightning Ripper, and no harm shall come to baby boy Kana and baby girl Kana. I forbid it!